As we create geometry on our screen, we'll need to pause from time to time to do a little cleanup on our drawing. The trim and the extend commands do a great job helping us fix our line work after we've made some changes. Let's take a look at how they work. I'm going to open a drawing. We're going to go into our exercise files folder. We're going to come down to chapter 9, and I want to open up the very first drawing, number 1, the trim and extend drawing. I'll highlight that guy and click open. Now I've got some abstract geometry on my screen. I'd like to use this to learn how the trim and the extend commands work. If we look at this geometry, let's make the assumption that I intended to have my line and my arc stop at this vertical line. So when I drew these guys, I actually drew them a little bit farther than I should have. I'm going to use the trim command to cut these ends off. To use the trim command, I'm going to come over to my modify toolbar and I'm going to click on the trim icon. If we look at the command line, Autocad is now asking me to select cutting edges. When we use the trim command, we'll use one entity to cut another. So I'm going to come over and click on this vertical line. That's going to be my cutting edge. And then I'm going to right-click to let Autocad know I'm done selecting objects. Now Autocad's going to allow me to select objects to trim. All I have to do is click each entity, and it will be trimmed back to that line. Let me right-click to finish the command. I'll select Enter. Now if I look at the geometry a little bit lower, I've got the exact opposite problem. This line and arc should have been drawn farther forward such that they met this vertical line. Let's use the extend command to correct this geometry. To launch extend, I'm going to come over to my modify toolbar. Right next to the trim icon is the extend icon. Let me click this guy to launch the command. If I look at my command line, notice Autocad's asking me to select a boundary edge. You see where the trim command pulls our entities back to meet an existing line segment. The extend command projects our entities forward to meet an existing line segment. So my boundary edge is going to be this vertical line. I'll just click on it to select it, and I will right-click to let Autocad know I'm done. And then I can click each entity to project it forward or to extend it to meet my boundary edge. When I'm all done, I can right-click and select Enter. Now the trim and the extend commands are essentially the same. They have the exact same workflow. In fact, they are so similar, I can access either command from within the other. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to pan my geometry over, and I've got another abstract example here. Let's say I would like to convert this line work into the shape of a ladder. Well, I'm obviously going to have to trim off some pieces, and I'm going to have to extend some others. Let's try and do it all from within one command. I'm going to come over and launch my trim command. AutoCAD's asking me to select my cutting edges. I'm going to use this vertical line, and I'm going to come over and click this vertical line. I'll right-click to let AutoCAD know I'm done. Now I can take and click each piece that I'd like to trim. Now, up until now, I've been selecting my objects to trim one at a time. I can also do it by using a crossing window. If I come over to this side, I can click once above my entities and I can come down and create a crossing window. Let me click to finish the window. And I've now trimmed multiple entities at one time. Now that my objects have been trimmed off, at this point I can use the extend, but I don't have to launch the extend command. Notice at my cursor, it says select object to trim or shift select to extend. That means if I hold my shift key, I will toggle automatically to the extend command. Let me hold shift and I'll click this line. I'll click this one. Each one of my cutting edges becomes a boundary edge if I hold my shift key. So I'll click all my entities, and when I'm done, I'll release the shift key. I'll right-click and select Enter. Let's try and use the trim and the extend commands in a practical example. I'm going to pan over to the right. Let's say I'm an architect, and this is a window that I've chosen for a building that I'm creating for my client. Now, it's a nice 3-pane window, but maybe when the client comes in and looks at it, he says, you know, that's kind of static. It's a little bit boring. Could we do something with an arched top, possibly? Sure, we can do that. I'm going to pan over to the right a little bit more. Through the process of stop motion animation, I've already created my circles to represent my arched top. Let's take and clean this geometry up using trim and extend. Well, I already know I don't need the bottom half of these circles, so I'm going to come over and launch my trim command. AutoCAD wants me to select my cutting edge. I'll select this line as my cutting edge, and I'll right-click. Then I can click the bottom half of this circle and this circle to have them trimmed off. Let me right-click and select Enter to get out of the command. At this point, I can look at it and say, you know what, I don't need these little pieces on the end. Let's trim those off. I'm going to launch the trim command again. This time we'll grab the arc. I'll right-click to let Autocad know I'm done selecting my cutting edges. And then I can pick this piece and this piece to remove the ends. Now I'm not going to exit the command just yet because I would like to project the dividers between my windows up to the top. So, since this edge is already highlighted, if I hold my Shift key and create a crossing window across my dividers, let me click to finish my window, Autocad will project those lines up to the top. Now that I'm done, I'm going to right-click and select Enter to get out of the command. I only have to do one more thing. I have to go around and clean up these little pieces. I've got to take and trim a bunch of small parts out of this window. Let's do that. I'm going to launch the trim command one more time. Trim, and this time AutoCAD's asking me to select cutting edges, or if I hit the Enter key, I select all. It would be much easier in this case for everything to be a cutting edge, so I'm going to hit Enter, and now everything can be used to trim everything else. I can just move my cursor over each of these little pieces, and I can click, and each one gets trimmed off. There we go. When I'm finished, I can right-click and select Enter to get out of the command. As you can see, the trim and extend commands have essentially the same workflow. Jumping from one to the other is as simple as pressing your Shift key. Knowing how to use both of these commands will allow you to quickly and accurately clean up your geometry.